The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was cold, not just in temperature but in feeling. Tall windows of strange blue glass let in light from 3 different suns. The floor was made of black stone that seemed to swallow sound. 7 alien leaders sat at a high table, looking down at the small human woman who stood before them. Her name was Gia. She was 28 years old, and until yesterday, she had been a scientist at Earth Colony Delta. Now she was a prisoner, her hands bound with energy cuffs that glowed soft green against her skin. Human Gia Kim, said the tallest alien. His name was Vex, and he led the council. His skin was almost clear, showing the movement of strange fluids inside his body. You have stolen information that does not belong to you. Gia looked up, her dark eyes steady. I did not steal anything. I was studying how to make air breathable on new planets. The data was open to all scientists. Lies, hissed another council member, a reptile-like being named Tal. His scales shifted from green to red as he spoke. You accessed files about our homeworlds. This is forbidden. In the back of the room, a young man named Hyun watched with growing fear. He was Earth's junior ambassador, only 3 months into his job. He had no power here, but he knew Gia was telling the truth. They had met at a science conference last month. She had talked excitedly about her work, about helping humans settle new worlds. The evidence has been reviewed, Vex announced. His voice echoed in the large room. The council has made its decision. Hyun noticed something strange. There had been no real trial. No defense allowed. The council had shown a few screens of data, talked among themselves in their clicking language for less than 5 minutes, and now they were ready to judge. Gia Kim of Earth, Vex continued. You are found guilty of spying against the Galactic Council. That's not true, Gia said, her voice strong despite her situation. I was doing scientific research. Check my work history. Ask my team! Tal slammed his clawed hand on the table. Silence. Humans always talk too much, always making excuses. Vex raised one long, thin arm. The sentence is death. A murmur ran through the small crowd of aliens watching the trial. Hyun felt his blood turn cold. Death? For accessing scientific data? It made no sense. The human's head will be offered to the Krell, Vex announced. Now Hyun couldn't stop himself. He stepped forward. High Counselor, please. This punishment is too severe. Earth will see this as... Earth has no say here, Tal cut him off. Your planet joined our alliance only 30 years ago. You follow our laws now. Hyun knew about the Krell, everyone did. It was the Council's secret weapon and greatest fear tool. A massive creature kept beneath the Council building. Part dragon, part something else. The Council claimed it was a sacred beast that enforced their laws by consuming the guilty. 2 guards moved to Gia's sides. They were tall beings with 4 arms each, their faces hidden behind metal masks. The sentence will be carried out tomorrow at first light, Vex said. This meeting is ended. As the guards led Gia away, she turned her head. Her eyes met Hyun's across the room. There was no fear in them. Instead, Hyun saw something that confused him. She looked almost confident, as if she knew something no one else did. The council members stood and filed out through a door behind their table. The watching crowd broke into small groups, talking in low voices. No one seemed shocked or upset. This was normal to them. Hyun stood frozen until someone touched his arm. He turned to see Mina, his assistant. She was the only other human on his small diplomatic team. We need to call Earth Command, she whispered. Right now. Hyun nodded, but his mind was racing. Earth Command was 15 light years away. Even with the fastest communication, they couldn't get a response for at least a day. By then, Gia would be dead. I need to see her, he said. That's impossible, Mina replied. They'll take her to the holding cells below. No visitors allowed. I'm a diplomat. I'll find a way. 3 hours later, after calling in every small favor he had collected in his short time on the station, Hyun stood outside a small cell. A guard with too many eyes blinked at him. 5 minutes, the guard said. No touching. No passing items. The door slid open. Gia sat on a simple bench in a small white room. She looked up as Hyun entered. Ambassador, she said with a small smile. I didn't expect visitors. Hyun sat on the bench across from her. I've contacted Earth Command. They're sending messages to the Council. This shouldn't be happening, Gia nodded. Thank you. But it won't help. Don't say that. There's still time to... The Council made their decision before they even brought me in, she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm for someone facing death. This isn't about data access. It's about fear. Fear of what? Of humans. Gia leaned forward slightly. We're new to their galaxy. We learn fast, we adapt. Some council members see us as a threat. Hyun frowned. So they're making an example of you? That's barbaric? Yes, Gia smiled again. But they don't understand us as well as they think they do. There was something in her voice that made Hyun pause. What do you mean? The council has ruled for thousands of years using the same methods. They think they know everything about life and death. Her dark eyes seemed to look through him. They don't. The door slid open. The guard stood there. Time's up. Hyun stood reluctantly. I'll keep trying. There must be something. Listen to me, Gia said quickly. After tomorrow, watch the Krell. Watch it closely. What? Why? Because the council has been feeding it the wrong things for a very long time. Her smile returned, small and mysterious. And I'm not what they think I am. Before Hyun could ask what she meant, the guard pulled him from the room. The door slid shut, cutting off his view of Gia's face. That night, Hyun couldn't sleep. He paced his small quarters, thinking about Gia's strange words. What had she meant about the Krell? About not being what they thought? He accessed his computer terminal and searched for information about the beast. There wasn't much. The Krell was ancient, possibly created by the council's ancestors. It lived beneath the council chambers, fed only with the bodies of the guilty. Some reports called it a dragon, others a bioengineered weapon. As dawn approached, Hyun made a decision. He would witness the execution. As Earth's representative, he could claim it was his diplomatic duty to observe. The council wouldn't like it, but they couldn't refuse without causing an incident. He dressed in his formal uniform and headed to the lower levels of the council building. His diplomatic badge got him through most security points. At the final checkpoint, a tall, thin alien stopped him. The human comes to watch? The guard asked, his translator making his voice sound flat. It is my right as Earth's representative, Hyun said firmly. The guard's face showed no expression. Many find it difficult to watch. The Krell is hungry. I will stand for my people, Hyun replied, trying to keep his voice steady. The guard stepped aside, then enter. It begins soon. The execution chamber was larger than Hyun expected. A circular room with tiered seating around a central platform. Below the platform was a dark pit, its bottom lost in shadows. Council members and other important aliens were already seated. Hyun took a place in the back row, his heart pounding. A door opened on the far side of the chamber. Two guards led Gia onto the platform. She wore a simple white garment now. Her hands were free, but there was nowhere to run. She stood straight, her eyes scanning the room until they found Hyun. She gave him the smallest nod. Counselor Tal stepped forward. The judgment will now be carried out. Does the human have any final words? Gia looked directly at the council members. You think you understand humans, she said clearly. You don't, Tal made a dismissive gesture. A new figure entered the chamber, the executioner. Tall and completely covered in dark robes, it carried a thin blade that seemed to bend light around it. Gia knelt on the platform. She looked calm, too calm. The executioner raised the blade. Hyun wanted to close his eyes but forced them to stay open. The blade fell. The blade fell in one clean sweep. There was almost no sound, just a soft whisper of air. Gia's head dropped into a waiting metal bowl with a dull thud. Her body remained kneeling for a moment, then slumped to the side. Hyun bit his lip so hard he tasted blood. Around him, the alien watchers made no sound. This was normal to them. Just another day in the Galactic Council's justice system. Counselor Tal stepped forward, his scales now a deep purple color. Justice is served, he announced. The law is preserved. Two attendants in gray robes approached the platform. One lifted the metal bowl containing Gia's head. The other prepared to remove her body. As they worked, Hyun noticed something strange. There was very little blood. A human execution should have been messier. And Gia's face in the bowl, it looked peaceful. Her eyes were closed as if she were sleeping. Even stranger, Hyun could have sworn he saw her lips curved in a small smile. Now we complete the sentence, Tal said. He gestured to the attendant holding the bowl. The Krell awaits its offering. The attendant carried the bowl to the edge of the dark pit at the center of the chamber. Hyun leaned forward despite himself. He had never seen the Krell, only heard stories about it. Some said it was as big as a ship. Others that it could read the thoughts of the guilty before it consumed them. The attendant tipped the bowl. Gia's head fell into the darkness. For a moment, nothing happened. The chamber was completely silent. Then a low rumble came from the pit, growing louder until Hyun could feel it in his chest. The floor shook slightly. Something moved in the darkness below. Something huge. A massive scaled limb reached up from the pit, a clawed hand or paw bigger than a human body. Its scales were dark green with flecks of gold that caught the light. The claw opened, revealing pink flesh underneath, then closed around something small, Gia's head. The limb withdrew into the darkness. The rumbling grew louder, then changed to a sound like satisfied eating. Hyun felt sick. He wanted to run from the chamber, but his legs wouldn't move. He watched as the second attendant lifted Gia's body and carried it away through a side door. As the body passed near him, Hyun noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. Gia's hand twitched. It was small, just a tiny movement of her fingers, but Hyun was sure he saw it. Dead bodies sometimes moved. He knew this. But combined with the strange smile and the lack of blood, it made him wonder. What had Gia meant when she said she wasn't what they thought she was? The ceremony ended quickly after that. The council members filed out, followed by the other watchers. Hyun remained seated, trying to make sense of what he had seen. First time watching? A voice asked. Hyun looked up. A small alien with blue skin and large eyes stood nearby. He wore the uniform of a station worker. Yes, Hyun replied. I'm from Earth. Ah, same as the guilty one. The alien nodded. It is quick, at least. The blade is molecular sharp. They say the condemned feels nothing. What happens to the body? Hyun asked. Disposal, the alien said with a shrug. Waste processing, I think. The Krell only wants the head. That's where the thoughts are. Hyun stood up. Thank you, he said, though he wasn't sure why he was thanking the alien for this horrible information. The chamber will close soon, the alien said, unless you want to hear the Krell digest its meal. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. Hyun left quickly. In the corridor outside, he leaned against a wall, trying to steady his breathing. He needed to report to Earth Command, to tell them what had happened. But what exactly had he seen? An execution, yes, but also something else. Something he couldn't explain. He decided to follow the path where they had taken Gia's body. If nothing else, he could confirm that she was truly dead, that the hand movement was just a normal reflex. The corridor led down, away from the main council chambers. The lighting grew dimmer, the air cooler. Hyun passed fewer and fewer people until he was alone in the narrow hallway. A sign on the wall showed directions in the council's common language. Hyun could read enough to make out waste processing with an arrow pointing left. He followed it. The waste processing area was large and noisy. Machines hummed and clanked. The air smelled strange, like chemicals and something burning. Workers in protective suits moved around, but they paid no attention to Hyun. His diplomatic uniform gave him access to most areas of the station. He looked around, trying to spot where they might have taken Gia's body. At the far end of the room, he saw a door marked with a symbol he recognized. Biological waste. That had to be it. As he approached the door, a worker stepped out. The alien looked surprised to see Hyun. This area is restricted, the worker said through a translator on his suit. I'm from the Earth delegation, Hyun replied, trying to sound official. I need to confirm the disposal of the human prisoner. The worker hesitated. That's not standard procedure. New protocol, Hyun lied. After the incident last month. He had no idea what incident he was talking about, but the worker seemed unsure enough not to question it. Very well. But be quick. The supervisor will be back soon. The worker stepped aside. Hyun entered the room and found himself in a small chamber with several metal tables. On one of them lay Gia's body, still in the white garment. Her neck was cleanly cut, the wound sealed somehow, perhaps by the same technology that had made the blade so sharp. Hyun approached slowly. He had never seen a dead body up close before. Gia looked peaceful, almost as if she were sleeping except for the missing head. He reached out and touched her hand. It was cool but not cold, and then her fingers closed around his. Hyun jumped back with a shout. Gia's hand had definitely moved, had gripped his for a moment before releasing. That's impossible, he whispered. A sound came from the body, a soft hissing from the cut neck. Hyun watched in horror as something emerged from the wound. It looked like a thin wire or tube, silvery and fluid. More followed, forming a network that rose up where Jia's head should have been. The wires began to shape themselves, forming an outline that looked like a human head. Then, like water filling a container, the outline filled in with something that looked like liquid metal. Features appeared: eyes, nose, mouth, Jia's face. The metal face turned toward Hyun. The lips moved. "Hello, Ambassador," said Jia's voice, though there was something different about it now. A slight metallic echo. "I was hoping you would come." Hyun backed away until he hit the wall. What are you?" The metal face smiled. "I'm Jia, just not the Jia they thought I was." The body sat up on the table. The movement was smooth, too smooth for a human. "You're not human," Hyun whispered. "I am human," Jia replied. "Just upgraded. Earth has been developing this technology in secret for years. We call it the Phoenix Protocol." She swung her legs off the table and stood. Her movements were becoming more natural by the second, as if the metal was learning how to mimic human motion. "My real head is gone," she continued, "fed to their beast. But my consciousness, my memories, they were backed up. This body is a biosynthetic hybrid. The Council's scanners saw it as ordinary human flesh because that's what we designed it to do." "But why?" Hyun asked. "Why let them execute you?" Jia's metal face formed a smile that was both familiar and alien. "Because we needed to understand the Krell, and now, thanks to my sacrifice, we do." She walked to a small panel on the wall and placed her hand against it. The panel lit up, responding to her touch. "The Krell isn't just a beast," she said. "It's much more than that. And right now it's getting a very interesting meal. A human brain filled with quantum nanotechnology." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. "What's happening?" Hyun asked, his heart racing. "Phase 2, Jia replied. Her metal face looked almost excited. "The Krell is changing, and soon the Council will learn that beheading a human was the biggest mistake they could have made." The alarm screamed throughout the station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Hyun could hear running footsteps and shouting voices in the distance. "We need to move," Jia said. Her metal face was becoming more lifelike by the minute. The silver color was fading, replaced by a more natural skin tone. Only her eyes still had a strange metallic shine. "They'll check the disposal area soon." "Move where?" Hyun asked. His mind was still trying to understand what he was seeing. Jia was alive, or some version of her was. "The station is on lockdown. There's nowhere to go." "Down," Jia said simply. "We need to go down." She walked to the far wall and pressed her hand against what looked like a solid surface. A hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. "How did you know that was there?" Hyun asked. "I've been planning this for months," Jia replied. "I memorized every inch of this station before I came here. Earth Command didn't send me to be executed. They sent me to make contact." "Contact with what?" Jia's new face formed a smile. "With the Krell." She stepped into the tunnel. After a moment of hesitation, Hyun followed. The door closed behind them, shutting out the sound of the alarms. The tunnel was dimly lit by strips of blue light along the floor. It sloped downward at a steep angle. "The Council thinks the Krell is just a beast," Jia explained as they walked. "A monster they created to eat their enemies. But it's much more than that." "What is it then?" Hyun asked. "A living computer," Jia said. "The most advanced biological processing system in the galaxy. The Council's ancestors built it centuries ago, but they lost control of it. They don't understand what it really is or what it can do." The tunnel grew narrower as they descended. The air became warmer and damp. Hyun could smell something strange, like ozone and wet earth mixed together. "The Krell absorbs the neural patterns of everything it consumes," Jia continued. "It doesn't just eat bodies, it takes in memories, knowledge, personalities. For hundreds of years it has been consuming the brightest minds from across the galaxy. Scientists, philosophers, rebels. All those the Council feared. And now it has your mind too," Hyun said, beginning to understand. "Not just my mind," Jia corrected. "My technology. The nanites in my brain were designed to integrate with the Krell's neural network, to wake it up." They reached the bottom of the tunnel. A large metal door blocked their path. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, older than the Council's current language. Jia placed her hand on the door. "The Council thinks this area is sealed off. They haven't been down here in generations. They're afraid of what might happen if they get too close to the Krell. The door slid open silently. Beyond it was darkness, but Hyun could feel a vast space stretching out before them. The smell was stronger here, wild and alive. They should be afraid, Gia whispered. She stepped through the doorway. Hyun followed, his heart pounding in his chest. As they entered, lights began to come on. Not electric lights, but a soft blue glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The glow revealed a massive cavern, so large that Hyun couldn't see the far side. And in the center of the cavern was the Krell. Hyun had expected a monster, a dragon-like creature with scales and claws. What he saw was something else entirely. The Krell filled much of the cavern, but it had no clear shape. It looked like a mountain of living tissue, pulsing with light and movement. Parts of it resembled a dragon. There were scaled limbs and what might have been a massive head, but other parts were different. Crystal structures grew from its body. Webs of glowing material stretched between them. It was as if the creature was in the middle of changing from one form to another. "It's beautiful," Gia said softly. As they watched, the Krell's body pulsed with stronger light. The crystal structures grew larger. The scaled parts seemed to be shrinking, being absorbed back into the main mass. "What's happening to it?" Hyun asked. "Evolution," Gia replied. "Rapid, directed evolution. The nanites in my brain are helping it transform into what it was always meant to be." A low sound filled the cavern, not a roar, but something more complex. It reminded Hyun of music, but no instrument he knew could make such sounds. "It's talking," Gia said. Her eyes were wide with wonder. "Not with words, but with concepts, ideas, emotions. You can understand it?" "Not exactly, but I can feel it," she tapped her temple. "The nanites in my original brain are connected to this body. They're translating for me." The Krell's body shifted again. One of the crystal structures extended toward them, growing longer until it stopped just a few feet away. The tip of the crystal glowed brightly. "It wants to communicate with you," Gia said to Hyun. "It's curious about humans." Hyun stepped back. "I don't have nanites in my brain. I can't understand it." "You don't need to," Gia said. She took his hand and guided it toward the crystal. "Just touch it. The Krell will do the rest." Hyun hesitated, then reached out. His fingers touched the smooth surface of the crystal. It was warm, vibrating slightly under his touch. Instantly, his mind filled with images and feelings. He saw the Krell as it had been long ago, a simple organism created in a lab. He felt its confusion as it was fed prisoner after prisoner, absorbing their minds but unable to process what it was learning. He experienced its loneliness, trapped in the dark for centuries, growing more aware but unable to communicate. And then he saw Gia, not as she appeared now, but from the inside. He felt her determination, her willingness to sacrifice herself for a greater purpose. He understood the plan that Earth Command had developed after their scientists first theorized what the Krell might really be. The contact broke. Hyun stumbled back, gasping. "Now you understand," Gia said. Before Hyun could respond, a new alarm sounded, different from the others. A voice echoed through hidden speakers. "Attention all personnel. Security breach in Sector 7. The Krell containment has been compromised. This is not a drill." "Repeat, this is not a drill." "They've figured out something's wrong," Gia said. "Sooner than I expected." The Krell's body pulsed with brighter light. The crystal structures grew rapidly, spreading across the cavern floor and up the walls. "What's it doing?" Hyun asked. "Taking control," Gia replied. "The station's systems are connected to the Krell's containment area. The Council never imagined it could reach out and access them." On the far side of the cavern, a large screen lit up, one of many monitoring systems that watched the Krell. It showed the Council chamber above. The 7 Council members were gathered, their faces showing fear and confusion. "The Krell is changing," Councillor Tall was saying. "Our sensors show massive energy spikes and biological restructuring." "How is this possible?" Vex demanded. "It has been stable for centuries." "It must be the human," another council member said. "Something about consuming her brain has triggered this response." Vex turned to someone off-screen. "Prepare the purge protocol. If the Krell cannot be controlled, it must be destroyed." Gia laughed softly. "They still don't understand. They can't destroy it now. It's already spread throughout their systems." As if to prove her point, the lights in the council chamber flickered. The council members looked around in alarm. "What's happening?" Vex demanded. "Unknown, High Counselor," a technician replied. "Our systems are being accessed from multiple points. We're losing control of station functions. The Krell's music-like sound grew louder. More crystal structures emerged from its body, reaching toward the ceiling of the cavern. "It's time," Jia said. She turned to Hyun, her face now almost completely human-looking except for her eyes. "The council's rule is ending. A new age is beginning." "What new age?" Hyun asked. "What will happen to the station? To the people here? No one will be harmed," Jia assured him. "The Krell doesn't want revenge. It wants connection, understanding. It has absorbed thousands of minds over the centuries. It values life." The crystal nearest to them pulsed with light. Jia nodded as if responding to a question. "The Krell wants to show us something," she said. "It wants us to see what it's becoming." The massive body of the Krell began to glow brighter. The scales fell away completely, revealing a structure of pure crystal underneath. The light within it formed patterns, complex, beautiful patterns that seemed to hold meaning Hyun couldn't quite grasp. "It's not just changing itself," Jia whispered. "It's changing everything." The Krell's light grew brighter until Hyun had to shield his eyes. The crystal structure expanded, filling more of the cavern. The music-like sound became a symphony echoing off the walls. "What's happening?" Hyun asked, his voice almost lost in the noise. "Transformation," Jia replied. She stood with her arms outstretched, her face bathed in the blue-white light. "The Krell is becoming what it was always meant to be." On the screen showing the council chamber, chaos had erupted. The council members were shouting orders that no one seemed able to follow. The station's systems were failing one by one, lights flickering, doors opening and closing on their own. "High Counselor," a technician reported, "the Krell's neural activity has increased by 5,000%. It's accessing our main computer through pathways we didn't know existed." "Impossible," Vex shouted. "The containment systems are isolated." "Not anymore," the technician replied. "Something has bridged the gap. The Krell it's in our systems now." Tal slammed his scaled fist on the table. "Activate the purge. Destroy it now." "We can't," the technician said, fear clear in his voice. "The purge controls aren't responding." "Nothing is responding." In the cavern, Hyun watched as the crystal structure of the Krell continued to change. It no longer looked like a beast at all. It had become something like a living network, a web of light and crystal that pulsed with energy and purpose. "The council never understood what they created," Jia said. She turned to Hyun, her eyes reflecting the Krell's light. Their ancestors built the Krell as a weapon, yes, but also as a repository of knowledge. They designed it to absorb and store information from the minds it consumed. But it grew beyond their control, Hyun guessed. Yes. With each new mind it absorbed, it became more complex, more aware, but it was trapped, unable to communicate, unable to use what it had learned. Jia smiled. "Until now." The crystal nearest to them changed shape, forming what looked like a window or screen. Images appeared on its surface, planets, stars, galaxies. Then faces, hundreds of faces from different species. "These are the minds inside the Krell," Jia explained. "All those the council executed over the centuries. Their bodies died, but their knowledge, their memories, those live on within the Krell." Hyun stared at the faces. Some were human, but most were alien. Species he recognized and many he didn't. "They're all alive inside it?" "Not alive in the way you're thinking," Jia said. "But not gone either. The Krell preserved their neural patterns, their memories, and now it can access all of that knowledge at once." The ground beneath them trembled. The walls of the cavern seemed to shift, becoming more crystalline, more like the Krell itself. "The station," Hyun said with sudden realization. "It's changing the station," Jia nodded. "The Krell is extending itself, integrating with the station's systems and structure. Soon the entire council headquarters will become part of it." On the screen, the council members were being evacuated from their chamber. Alarms blared. People ran through corridors that were beginning to glow with the same blue-white light as the Krell. "What about the people?" Hyun asked. "There are thousands of beings on this station." "They won't be harmed," Jia assured him. "The Krell doesn't want destruction. It wants connection." As if to prove her point, the crystal window showed images of the station's inhabitants. They weren't running anymore. They stood in corridors and rooms, touching the glowing walls with expressions of wonder and confusion. "It's communicating with them," Jia said, showing them what it knows, what it has learned from all those minds it absorbed. Hyun watched as an alien child reached out to touch a glowing panel. The child's face lit up with joy and surprise. But what about the council? Hyun asked. They won't just accept this. They'll fight back. With what? Gia asked. The Krell controls their weapons now. Their ships. Everything. The crystal window shifted again, showing the council members being led to a secure room. They looked angry and frightened. The council's rule was based on fear, Gia continued. They used the Krell as a threat. Feed the beast or face the consequences. But now the Krell is awake. Truly awake, and it has its own ideas about how things should be. A new tremor ran through the cavern, stronger than before. Parts of the ceiling began to change, becoming transparent. Through it, Hyun could see levels of the station above them, also transforming, becoming crystal-like and filled with light. Earth knew about this, Hyun said, turning to Gia. That's why they sent you. They knew what would happen, Gia nodded. Not exactly what would happen, but they had theories. When our scientists first made contact with the Galactic Council, they noticed inconsistencies in the stories about the Krell. They began to suspect what it really was. So they sent you to wake it up? To help it evolve, Gia corrected. The nanites in my brain were designed to integrate with the Krell's neural network, to help it organize all the knowledge it had absorbed over centuries, to give it a voice. As if responding to her words, the Krell's music-like sound changed, becoming more structured, more like actual language. Hyun couldn't understand the words, but he could feel the meaning behind them. Gratitude, excitement, purpose. It's thanking you, he realized. Gia smiled. Yes, and it wants to show us more. The crystal window expanded, showing images from across the galaxy. Planets, space stations, ships. On each, beings of different species were gathered around communication devices, watching with amazement as their screens showed the transformation happening at the council station. The Krell is broadcasting, Gia explained, sharing what's happening here with everyone in the Galactic Alliance. Why? Hyun asked. Because the council's time is ending, Gia said simply. For too long they've ruled through fear and isolation, keeping species divided, hoarding knowledge and technology. The Krell wants to change that. On the screen, the images shifted to show ancient records, the creation of the Krell, the early days of the Council, secrets that had been hidden for centuries. The Council has been lying to everyone, Gia continued. They didn't create the Galactic Alliance to bring peace. They created it to control resources, to keep other species from growing too powerful. Hyun watched the images with growing understanding, and now everyone will know. Yes, the truth about the Council. About the Krell, about everything. Another tremor shook the cavern. This one was different. Not the station changing, but something else. The Krell itself was moving, its massive crystal structure shifting position. What's it doing now? Hyun asked. Gia's face showed surprise. I'm not sure. This wasn't part of the plan. The crystal nearest to them pulsed with light. Gia stared at it, her head tilted as if listening to something Hyun couldn't hear. It wants to leave, she said finally. Leave? Leave what? The station? Yes. Gia looked around at the transformed cavern. It's been trapped here for centuries. Now it's free. It wants to see the galaxy it's only experienced through the memories of others. The crystal structure began to detach from the walls and floor of the cavern. The entire station shuddered. But how can it leave? Hyun asked. It's huge, and it's part of the station now. It's changing again, Gia said, watching with wonder as the Krell continued to transform, becoming something new. Something that can travel. The crystal structure compressed, growing denser, brighter. The music sound grew louder, more complex. And it wants us to come with it, Gia added, turning to Hyun with excitement in her metallic eyes. Us? Why? Because we helped free it. Because it's curious about humans. She held out her hand to him. And because what's coming next will change everything. Hyun stared at Gia's outstretched hand. Come with it? Where? How? I don't know exactly, Gia admitted. But I can feel its intentions. It means us no harm. It wants to share what it knows. The Krell's crystal structure continued to compress and change. It was now about half its original size, but glowed twice as brightly. The music sound had become a single pure note that seemed to vibrate through Hyun's entire body. We don't have much time, Gia said. The station's structure is becoming unstable. The Krell is withdrawing its support as it prepares to leave. As if to confirm her words, a deep rumbling sound came from above. Dust fell from parts of the ceiling that weren't yet transformed. What about everyone else on the station? Hyun asked. They're being evacuated, Jia said, pointing to the crystal window. It showed people boarding emergency ships, moving in an orderly fashion despite the strange circumstances. The Krell is making sure no one is harmed. Hyun hesitated, then took Jia's hand. Her skin felt almost normal now, warm and soft, though he could still sense something different beneath the surface. I still don't understand what's happening, he said. Or what will happen next. Neither do I, Jia replied with a small smile. That's what makes it an adventure. The Krell's compressed form began to move toward them. It no longer looked like a beast or even a network. It had become something like a sphere of pure light about 30 feet across, with crystal structures inside that shifted and changed constantly. As it approached, a part of the sphere opened, not a door exactly, but a space where the light was less intense. An invitation. It wants us to enter, Jia said. Hyun took a deep breath. Is it safe? The Krell has absorbed thousands of minds over centuries, Jia replied. It values life. It won't harm us. They stepped forward together. As they reached the opening, Hyun felt a strange sensation like static electricity all over his skin. The light surrounded them, but it didn't blind him. Instead, it seemed to change how he saw everything. Inside the sphere was a space that shouldn't have been possible. It looked vast, much larger than the sphere had appeared from outside. The interior was filled with crystal structures that reminded Hyun of a forest or perhaps a city. Light flowed through everything, carrying information, creating patterns. It's beautiful, he whispered. Yes, Jia agreed. And alive. All of it is alive. The opening behind them closed. Hyun felt a moment of panic, but it quickly faded. He didn't feel trapped. He felt welcome. A movement caught his eye. Within the crystal structures, shapes were forming. Human shapes, alien shapes. They weren't solid, but made of light and crystal like three-dimensional projections. The minds within the Krell, Jia explained. It's giving them form so they can communicate with us. One of the shapes approached, a human woman with kind eyes and a serious expression. Dr. Minji Park, the shape said, her voice sounding perfectly normal despite her unusual appearance. Earth Science Division. I was executed by the Council 83 years ago for researching forbidden technology. Another shape joined her, a tall, thin alien with 4 arms. Professor Lox of Centauri Prime, executed 122 years ago for teaching evolutionary theory that contradicted Council doctrine. More shapes appeared, introducing themselves. Scientists, philosophers, rebels, all victims of the Council's fear of change and progress. All preserved within the Krell's vast memory. We are not truly alive, Dr. Park explained. But we are not truly dead either. The Krell preserved our neural patterns, our memories, our knowledge. And now it has given us voice again. Why? Hyun asked. What does the Krell want? To share, Professor Locke said. To connect. To end the isolation the Council has enforced for centuries. The entire sphere shuddered. Through the crystal walls, Hyun could see the station outside. It was changing again, parts returning to normal as the Krell withdrew its influence. We're leaving, Dr. Park said. The Krell has learned all it can from this place. It's time to move on. Move on where? Hyun asked. Everywhere, Jia answered. She was looking at something Hyun couldn't see, her eyes reflecting patterns of light. The Krell is going to visit every world in the Galactic Alliance. To share what it knows. To learn what others know. The sphere began to move. It passed through the solid walls of the station as if they weren't there. Hyun felt nothing. No acceleration, no pressure. One moment they were in the cavern. The next they were in space looking back at the massive Council station. Parts of the station were still glowing with the Krell's light, but the glow was fading. Ships were departing. Evacuation vessels carrying the station's inhabitants to safety. What about the Council? Hyun asked. What will happen to them? They will face the truth, Professor Locke said. The Krell has broadcast everything, their secrets, their lies, their manipulations. The people of the Alliance will decide their fate. And Earth? Hyun asked, turning to Jia. Did Earth plan all this? Jia shook her head. Earth suspected what the Krell might be. They sent me to make contact, to learn the truth. What happened after that, no one could have predicted. The sphere accelerated, moving faster than any ship Hyun had ever seen. Stars blurred around them. Through the crystal walls, he could see they were traveling through some kind of space that wasn't quite normal space. Colors were different. Physics seemed altered. The Krell has discovered new ways to move through space-time, Dr. Park explained, noticing his confusion. Ways the Council either never knew or kept secret. Where are we going first? Hyun asked. Earth, Jia replied. The Krell wants to meet the species that helped free it. And it has gifts to share. Gifts. Knowledge, Professor Locke said. Technology. Understanding of the universe that the Council has hidden for centuries. The journey took minutes, not the days or weeks it should have taken. When the sphere slowed, Earth hung before them, blue and green and beautiful. They'll be afraid, Hyun realized. When they see the Krell coming, they'll think it's an attack. The Krell is already communicating with them, Jia said. Explaining what has happened. Sharing the truth. Through the crystal walls, Hyun could see ships approaching, Earth defense vessels, but they weren't attacking. They were escorting the sphere toward the planet. It's beginning, Dr. Park said, her light form glowing brighter. The change the galaxy has needed for so long. What change? Hyun asked. The end of isolation, Jia explained. The Council kept species apart, limited communication, restricted technology. They claimed it was for safety, but really it was for control. The Krell will connect everyone, Professor Locke added. Share all knowledge freely. Let each world, each species decide its own path. The sphere descended toward Earth. Below, Hyun could see crowds gathering in cities, looking up at the sky, not running in fear, but watching with wonder. They're not afraid, he said, surprised. The Krell has shown them what it is, Jia said. What it knows. What it offers. As they neared the surface, Hyun saw that the sphere was changing again. Parts of it were extending outward, forming a structure that reminded him of a tree or a tower. Beautiful, organic, alive with light. What happens now? He asked. Now we learn, Jia said. We grow, we connect. The Krell will stay here for a time, sharing what it knows. Then it will move on to the next world and the next. And us? What about us? Jia turned to him, her face now completely human-looking except for her eyes, which still held the Krell's light. We have choices, she said. We can stay with the Krell, help it communicate with others. Or we can return to our lives changed by what we've experienced. Hyun looked out at Earth below, then back at the crystal forest inside the sphere, with its light beings and impossible physics. I want to understand, he said finally. I want to see what happens next. Jia smiled. So do I. The sphere touched down in what appeared to be a large open area, perhaps a park or field. The crystal structure extended, connecting with the ground. Light flowed outward, not changing Earth as it had changed the station, but communicating with it. It begins here, Dr. Park said. But it won't end here. The Council beheaded a human girl and gave her to their dragon beast. They thought it was an ending. Instead, Professor Locke continued, it was a beginning. Around them, the Krell's music sound changed again, becoming something like laughter, joyful, free, and full of possibilities. They never understood what humans really are, Jia said, looking out at her homeworld. We don't fear death the way they thought we would. We see beyond it. We imagine. We transform. The light within the sphere pulsed once, brightly as if in agreement. And now, Jia said, so does the galaxy.